I'm Biresh Banerjee. Welcome. The governing coalition in Germany has collapsed and Chancellor Olaf Scholz has called for a confidence vote in mid-January. Scholz of the Social Democratic Party made the announcement after dismissing his finance minister, Christian Lindner, who leads the business-friendly Free Democrats. They formed part of the country's three-party coalition government with the Greens. The confidence vote will likely trigger new parliamentary elections by the end of March. We expect to hear live in the coming minutes from the head of the main opposition party, the Christian Democrats or the CDU. But first, here's how Scholz explained the decision to sack his finance minister.
I asked permission from the federal president to dismiss the finance minister. I was forced into this decision in order to prevent damage to our country. We need a government capable of taking action, that has the power to make the right decisions for our country. That's what I needed in the last 3 years, and that's what I need now. I made another extensive offer to the Free Democrats earlier today so that we can close the holes in the budget and avoid throwing our country into chaos.
Now, Scholz's decision follows months of infighting in the German government over the budget, and during a major slowdown of Germany's economy, Finance Minister Lindner blamed Chancellor Scholz for the breakup.
We made suggestions for an economic turnaround to put our country back on the path to success. Less bureaucracy, less taxation, pragmatic energy and climate policies, more control of immigration, at the same time strengthening individual responsibility, performance and encourage innovation. These suggestions were not even accepted as a basis for discussion by the Social Democrats and Greens.
Vice-Chancellor Robert Habeck from the Green Party, the third partner in Scholz's coalition, had this to say.
It wasn't possible to close the holes in the budget, but there were many different options on the table. And the biggest would have included ways to provide Ukraine with more support. That would have been the best response at the beginning of the day in which Donald Trump was elected. Germany has a role to play in Europe, and the fight in Ukraine is a fight for peace and freedom. We want peace and freedom in Europe, and Germany has a role to play.
The Chancellor said he wants to hold a confidence vote in January. The Conservative opposition, though, wants to see that vote held immediately.
There is absolutely no reason to wait until January of next year to hold a vote of confidence. The coalition no longer has a majority in the German Bundestag, and so the CDU-CSU parliamentary group unanimously demands that the Chancellor call a vote of confidence immediately by the beginning of next week at the latest.
The question, though, is what is behind this collapse of Germany's governing coalition? As we've heard, the country's struggling economy does play a big role. But here's a closer look at how Berlin reached its breaking point.
Tensions between the parties in Germany's government had been growing for some time, with economic policy causing the biggest clashes. Between the Chancellor Olaf Scholz, Economy Minister Robert Habeck, and Finance Minister Christian Lindner. The next election wasn't scheduled until September of next year. Now it looks like it might happen in March, and campaigning will begin a lot sooner. I find that totally irritating and also super disappointing. I have the feeling that we're already in election campaign mode, that people are no longer interested in finding real solutions within the group, but only in positioning themselves. I think it's an unworthy spectacle that's happening at the moment, one working against the other with no common ground that can be established. The disagreements at the center of the collapse revolve around how to revive Germany's flailing economy, which shrank last year and barely avoided recession this year. The country continues to struggle with high energy costs and fierce competition from China, particularly in the automotive market. Both consumer and business confidence is low. And what else? Germany faces a nearly €10 billion gap in next year's budget. How can it get out of this mess? That's a question Habeck and Lindner have very different answers to. Habeck believes targeted government spending will stimulate the economy, while Lindner wants spending cuts and to soften climate regulations. One thing everyone can agree on is that the divisions are damaging to all parties, and that the collapse comes at a particularly bad time for Germany. The future policies of U.S. President-elect Donald Trump are expected to pose a huge challenge to European trade and security. And now Germany, long regarded as Europe's leader in international issues, is distracted by domestic affairs.
Let's head now to another person that we can talk to. We're talking about the current instability in the German parliament. Let's bring in Thomas Silberhorn. He's a member of the German Bundestag for the conservative CSU. Thanks for making the time for us, Mr. Silberhorn. So the opposition coalition essentially wants a vote of no confidence immediately. Why can you not wait until January and get some work done for the country in the meantime?
Our conviction is that our country now needs clarity. There is no reason to accept an interim period of uncertainty over several months. So our clear expectation to Chancellor Scholz is to call for a vote of non-confidence this week or at least next week, and to have new elections possibly already at the end of January.
And if he doesn't agree to your demands, what does that mean? You will not cooperate with him at all?
Well, this is our first condition in order to come to specific issues. And we are not against minority governments in general, but there is no reason to tolerate a minority government with Chancellor Scholz. He has not been able to lead a majority government. He will all the more not be able to lead a minority government only with Social Democrats and Greens.
He doesn't want to lead a minority government forever. He just wants to buy some time so that he can pass some important legislation for the country. Presumably, when it comes to the question of the country and not party politics, that is something you might want to support?
We are ready to talk about legislation that has to be concluded until the end of this year. But before, we want to have clarity on the call for a vote of non-confidence.
So until you have that clarity, you will not provide any support to the government to pass what the government calls important legislation for the country?
We are ready to talk and also to accept legislation that is necessary to be concluded until the end of this year. But we also need clarity on the procedure that has to be undertaken now.
Why are you so keen to have this all done right now? Is it something to do with the popularity that you have in the opinion polls in this country?
No. Our experience for several months already, the inability of this government to conclude legislation. So there is already a period of uncertainties behind us, and we are not willing to prolong this situation. We now need clarity for our population, and we want to get new elections as soon as possible.
Is a constructive vote of no confidence in Parliament an option for you, basically to have Parliament vote on your candidate for the Chancellery without fresh elections?
No, this is not an option in this current situation of the German Bundestag and with the current seats of the different parties. Now it's time to ask the voters again and to come to elections as soon as possible. This is the clear expectation also according to opinion polls from our people.
All right, we'll leave it there for the moment. Thomas Silberhorn, a member of the conservative CSU party. Thanks so much for your time, sir.
Thank you.
DW's political correspondent Giulia Saudelli has more on the opposition CDU leader's statement.
Well, this is something that we'd already heard coming out of the conservative opposition, that they want Chancellor Olaf Scholz to ask for a vote of no confidence right now, as early as next week, and to go to elections as quickly as possible. Now, we've heard from Merz, the head of the CDU party, that he believes that it makes no sense for the government to stay in charge until the end of the year because it doesn't have a majority in parliament. so it would not be able to pass the laws that they want to get passed until the end of the year. Olaf Scholz has said he wanted to reach out to Friedrich Merz to make sure that they could come up with an agreement together to pass these laws that Scholz believes are important to get passed quite soon. Merz seems to disagree there, so we're going to have to see whether it's going to be possible at all to find a dialogue there. But we also need to consider that now that new elections are starting to appear on the horizon, that the different parties are already starting to think in terms of their political campaign. And it is in the interest of the conservative opposition, the CDU, to get to elections as quickly as possible. The party is currently polling first, quite ahead of all other parties. They're around 34% of polling now. And that would mean that they would be able to then lead negotiations with other parties to form a coalition government. And Friedrich Merz does not want to lose the opportunity of being ahead in the polls, of having a lot of voters behind him, and he doesn't want to risk that this advantage might wither away over the next few months, where Scholz and his party, but also the Greens and in general the other parties in parliament pick up on their campaign and maybe sort of catch up with the CDU.
DW political correspondent Giulia Saudelli there. Let's get more on this with Maria Thuerk. She's an associate senior lecturer in political science with a focus on coalition governments. She joins me now from Gothenburg in Sweden. Good to see you, and thanks for making the time. I'd just like to take a step back. If the governing coalition has collapsed, who is running Germany now?
So officially, we are in a position where the government can just keep on running. There is no vote of the parliament for the coalition itself, but the vote is for the prime minister, for the chancellor, and he is still in office. So as long as there is no vote of confidence, a vote of no confidence initiated by parliament to replace Scholz, Scholz could go until the end of the legislative period.
Okay, the opposition wants this vote of no confidence against Chancellor Scholz as early as next week. We haven't yet heard from the Chancellor what he thinks about that, but assuming that he says no, he would like to have a vote of confidence only in January. What then? Are we in a logjam situation in which nothing gets done in Germany?
Well, that would for sure be the case if the coalition now would continue as a caretaker government. As long as they are an official government capacity, they can actually make laws. There is a budget that has to be passed. As long as this would become only a caretaker government, we can only have a caretaker budget, so an emergency budget, and no laws that really can shape policy can be passed. So the case after there is the no confidence vote, after Scholz officially lost confidence in parliament, then we have a caretaker government, and then this is only emergency situation. Now, if the CDU would be willing to, they could actually do policy change under a minority government run by the Red and Green government.
Okay, all of this just sounds super complicated, so I'm just going to ask you a question that maybe concerns a lot of people, particularly here in Europe and maybe outside. So we have some sort of a bit of a logjam situation, right, in which it is not really clear what the next steps are. The situation is changing hour by hour. What would this mean, for example, when it comes to German support for Ukraine, which is a pressing issue, along with the budget as well? But what does it mean, for example, for German support for Ukraine? Could that be altered in the next few months?
So I would say that especially the support for Ukraine is a topic where there is a broad majority in parliament right now. And actually, this majority is larger right now in parliament than it might be potentially after new elections. So the CDU wants to initiate a faster snap election to get clear circumstances. But if we look at the polls right now, there's no way there's going to be clear circumstances after the elections. So it's rather likely that there would be a CDU-led government that has or is facing the exact same problems that the SPD-led government has right now.
So in a sentence, you are expecting early elections next year?
Well, this is not one sentence possible because I can't predict the future. I'm so sorry. But I guess there will be fastly new elections. There's Christmas also in between. So otherwise, I think that might already would be happening in December.
All right, we'll leave it there for the time being. But thanks for breaking that down for us. Maria Thuerk from joining us from Gothenburg in Sweden. Thanks so much.